Welcome everybody to episode 152 of the You Can't Comp This NBA Trading Card Podcast. I am your co-host, Russell Gibson, with always Adam Amy, and we have a very special guest this week. It is Rod Adams from Neon Trading Cards, and in true You Can't Comp This tradition, we were planning to have a 10 or a 15 minute conversation. Of course, it blew out to that sort of 35 to 40 minute time. So basically, we've decided to run this as a single episode. If you are coming across from the radio show and you wanted to listen to the rest of Rod's conversation, you've come to the right place. So basically, a small piece of this will be put into the radio show. But if you do want to listen to the full conversation, this is where you're supposed to be at. Let's hear a quick advertisement from Amir at Team Bangman, and then we will get straight into it. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Thanks as always for listening. Have a great day. Thank you to Team Bangman and Amir for all of your support to our podcast. We really appreciate your ongoing support into this space. The Bangman is currently in between his custom boxes. However, the next edition will be coming out very, very shortly, and we have a preview for you. Recommended retail price of $399. Coming with, but not only with these products, Select Hobby, Recon Hobby, Optic Hobby, Photogenic Hobby, which has been very hot this year. People have been eating that up. Revolution Hobby, and Origins H2 Hobby. I'm sure Amir will have something else to add to that nice little list there. If you want to get in contact with Amir, hit him up on Facebook at The Bangman, on Instagram, The Bangman, and also check out Amir's breaks. He is now ripping daily, filling out breaks really quickly. Payment options, Afterpay, ZipPay, bank transfer, PayPal. Amir has got it all. I've also seen his recent paperwork he submitted to the trademark office to patent his official catchphrase of Bang! Thanks, Team Bangman. We appreciate all of your support. Alrighty, we have a very special guest here. We have Rod Adams from Neon Breaks. And Rod, thank you so much for your time and coming on board to have a chat to us. I think in You Can't Comp This tradition, we have to ask you just to introduce yourself first and tell us a little bit about yourself. And then my favorite all-time question is, what's your first hobby memory?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for having me, guys. Yeah, nice to be here. Busy time of year with Hobby Hangout coming up, and
crazy week.
A bit of fun. So this time of year is always good. End of June is nice of the Hobby Hangout guys to book it in when everyone's busy with tax time. But look, my name's Rod Adams. For those who don't know me, I founded and run Neon Trading Cards with my business partner George. We founded that a year and a half ago now, along with Anthony, who a lot of people know as well. The three of us decided that we weren't quite happy with the offerings that were out there, and I'd been in the industry and working full time as a broker for 3 or 4 years at that stage, and thought, you know what, go and do something myself and do it exactly how I want to do it, and paired up with those two boys, and we launched Neon Trading Cards, and thanks to a incredible community and a whole bunch of awesome cats that sort of supported us from day dot, we've gone gangbusters since. We started off just doing soccer, and 18 months later, every night just about now, we're doing soccer, NBA, Marvel, UFC, WWE, baseball, and whatever else sort of lands on our desk. We did Disney over the weekend.
Yeah, right.
Nice.
Just, anything that comes through that sort of is a good product that we think sort of meets our checks and balances, we'll have a crack at, and it's been a hell of a ride. So that's me, and that's sort of, where I'm from and who I represent.
Yep.
My first hobby memory. So, it's not necessarily one specific one, but growing up, I was always an AFL card guy. So growing up, I was AFL cards in and out. I was an AFL supporter in and out. I played the game, and every single year, Dad would set collect, and Dad would collect the entire set of whatever selected release that year. So, we weren't sort of overflowing in massive hits, but once every maybe season, maybe twice if we were lucky, Dad would come home with a box. So normally it'd be packs, and we'd rip through a couple of packs and stuff. But every so often, Dad would splash out on a full box of Select, and we'd sit around the kitchen table ripping through it, and Dad yelling and cursing at us as kids to look after him, because Dad had the bookshelf with a folder for every single year in a full set, and we would go through the cards that we opened, Dad would sort out the doubles, and anything that wasn't Collingwood he didn't want. So anything that was a rare or had any sort of shred of value that wasn't a Collingwood card, we would bundle up, take down to Pipeworks.
Yeah.
We'd head into Pipeworks or Caribbean Market, depending on how far Dad wanted to drive, and we would trade them for Collingwood cards, more Collingwood cards. So,
Yeah, right.
Wow.
I remember.
Jules and Rob from EJ Cards down at Pipeworks or the other market you just spoke about?
I don't. It was a husband and wife. It was a husband and wife at Pipeworks.
Yeah.
And for the life of me, I can't remember their names. I think he was previously in the police force or something along those lines. But I can vividly remember exactly where their store was, right on the corner of the food court at Pipeworks.
Wow.
And I can remember Dad sort of doing deals with him while me and my brother would just be looking through everything else that they had there. And yeah, growing up, that's what it was about. Weekends were collecting, and whether it was cards, whether it was model cars, whether it was, actual cars as we got older and all the rest of it, was always collecting something. And they're some of the strongest memories that I've got with Dad. And even now, every select release that comes through, if I manage to get one through the select online releases, that's the box I rip with Dad. None of my SCC stuff goes into breaks. I'm an SCC member, so I'm lucky enough to get most of the releases. Yeah. And whatever I can get through SCC, I head around to Dad's and we rip it together, because he won't spend the modern day pricing on boxes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because all he wants is Collingwood cards. He still buys a set of Collingwood cards, but
he's still collecting. That was what I was going to ask you.
So he'll still collect Collingwood cards. Every year he buys a Collingwood Premiership Predictor, regardless of how good or bad we're going. Every year he buys a Collingwood Premiership Predictor, and he'll buy the Collingwood base set from the main release, whether that's Optimum or whatever it might be.
Nice.
He'll buy the Collingwood base set. So
awesome.
Yeah, it's that's where it all started for me way back then, growing up, and then got a bit older and discovered soccer cards, and it all sort of snowballed from there.
Do you collect yourself, or you?
Yeah. So I collect soccer predominantly.
Yeah.
So I've got a bit of AFL, and there's a few of the bigger cards that Dad had from growing up. Like we've got a Scott Pendlebury draft pick signature and Daisy Thomas and Didac. We've got most of the older draft pick signatures and stuff. So Dad's given them to me to look after, but I predominantly collect soccer and Liverpool mainly. There's a few prospects and rookies that I chase, but predominantly Liverpool. So I'm a Liverpool tragic, which is horrible because they're one of the most expensive teams to collect.
Yeah.
Nothing's cheap. Doesn't matter who it is. But I've got far too many. I've just finished my second rainbow for Curtis Jones, who's my main PC. He's a young fella he was a 2021 rookie for Liverpool.
Nice.
How many cards is in the rainbow? Because I'm assuming it's not like the select rainbow where there's 150 variants or something.
People are going to laugh at me because I do pick the easiest rainbows and I make sure I've got the 101 first. So I've done the 2021 Obsidian Rainbow.
Why would they laugh at you? That's just sensible.
It's common
start
sense,
with the
right?
101 and work out, not the other way around. It's impossible.
You can't chase the
otherwise.
rainbow without the 1 of 1, right?
Yeah.
Correct. So I've done the 2021 Rookie Obsidian Rainbow and the 23-24 Prism Choice Rainbow.
Great.
Again, I think the Obsidian one's like 12 cards and the Choice one was easy. That was like 6 cards or something.
Yeah. That would be ideal, actually. 6 to 12 is, I'm totally fine with that.
And look,
That's a sensible rainbow, right?
Yeah. Correct. I'm not one to go and find cards and check eBay every single day. I just don't have the concentration for it, and I sort of lose track of things far too easily, and I miss cards all the time. So those small rainbows mostly filled from some incredible people knowing that I'm searching for them and tracking down cards for me. Without their help, I wouldn't have got anywhere near them, to be honest. But I love it. I've been a collector long before I was working full-time in the industry, and I'll be a collector for a long time after it. I still buy into breaks every single night of the week, just about. I'm a break tragic as well.
Yeah. Either you're a collector or you're not. And it's actually really hard to explain to somebody who's not a collector what you do as a collector. Yeah. It's this really awkward sort of conversation that comes up.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So keeping in that collector's vein, how you came to our attention was a post that you put up on Scammer. So why don't you just talk to us very briefly from a very high level? We don't need to mention any names. We don't need any litigation or lawsuits coming against us. Right. And then talk to us about why you chose to do that and what you're hoping to achieve out of it. Because I think maybe the part that got a little bit derailed in the comments was that it did become more of a personal sort of thing, or maybe it, again, of course, like any other sort of Facebook group, it got derailed, and that's just the nature of the internet, and that's fine. But I think you were trying to make a particular point, and I think we should probably flesh that out a little bit, because this is what we do here.
Absolutely, and it's the world at the moment, especially in some in industries or in different hobbies and all the rest of it. It's a world that's generally governed by group chats. I think everyone's got half a dozen group chats running, and different people getting together and sharing different ideas, and generally all batting for the one team or batting for another team. And we have these big conversations in these group chats, and those conversations are something that I always feel should be public in certain occasions, and you should be able to get an even objective view on a subject. And the main topic of that post is obviously the $1 auctions. Now, $1 auctions aren't something new. They're not something that has, popped up in the last 3 months. They've existed for years. Whatnot do them.
But they've become exponentially more available to people because of Whatnot.
I mean, it's taken from the eBay 99-cent auction.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's common. We know what it is.
Correct. So people they've always been there, but they've always had that impartial third body managing the auctions. And that's where something that, at the end of the day, people can shill eBay auctions as easily as they can shill Facebook auctions and create separate accounts and all the rest of it. But there is some sort of checks and balances in place to ensure that a sale gets made and a payment gets made, and that an account is fairly legitimate. Now, eBay cop a fair whack socially about how they operate, but to their credit, they still do a hell of a good job at making sure that the vast majority of transactions are legitimate and safe.
Yeah.
Like the shill bidding thing is very much in the forefront of like, people know it happens, and eBay cracked down on it quite heavily.
Correct. So there's at least something there that's batting for the punter, batting for the person that's making these purchases, and at least sort of trying things.
Yep.
I am 100% absorbed by the hobby. I spend most waking hours thinking about it, looking at it, following as many Facebook pages and social media groups and news and Twitter and Insta and all the rest of it, and just trying to absorb as much information as possible. And when I see it, I pay a bit more attention to it than normal. So looking at these $1 auctions that have popped up and seeing a sort of similar theme as far as what they were being run in regards to the type of product that they were being run, how they were being run, and to a degree as well, who was running them, just set off a whole bunch of alarm bells for me. It just raised a whole lot of red flags as far as how I look as a sort of skeptic's view on things. So I sat and watched and saw.
Sorry to interrupt you. So you would consider yourself to be a skeptic? Is that because that is a key point of like how you look at the world? You know what I mean? Just so we understand you
absolutely.
a bit better.
I've 100% got a. I don't believe anything until I know it to be fact, sort of thing. Like, I don't take anything on face value.
Mm-hmm.
It might be my background in car sales that tells me that, if someone's going to take advantage somewhere, or if someone's going to present something that it's not.
You can be healthily skeptical, by the way, too. I'm definitely not having a go at your personality typing here.
Yeah,
it's like,
I saw these and paying a bit more attention to them. I was sort of watching bidding patterns, and again, because I've got experience in watching auctions, I used to buy 40, 50 cars a day at an auction. It's something that I am exposed to in a previous life, and I've got experience in watching the patterns and watching the teams jumping from, for example, they start at $1, they go to $8, and then the next logical bid would be $10 or $12, but suddenly that bid would jump to 15 from 8, and you go, well, that's a bit odd. And this is halfway through an auction. We've all seen eBay and we've all seen auctions. We know that the bulk of the movement happens in the last sort of 10 seconds of an auction, 20 seconds of an auction. There was a significant pattern of that not happening. It was consistent, and of course, people that were bidding were not winning teams. They were bidding. They would bid big jumps, so they would jump 200% sometimes. They would jump a dramatic amount halfway through an auction and then never come back into bid again.
That is a massive red flag. I'm with you on that.
So it was just a red flag, and then it was something that I don't have enough time and patience to zero in on it and sort of find out exactly who's doing what and track data. I'm a data guy, and if I'm ever going to sort of specifically call someone out or specifically sort of do some sort of action, I want it to be data driven and I want it to be factual.
Yeah.
As you can tell in my post, I didn't have the time or the patience to go and get that data and sort of drill it all down. So I wanted to have a conversation about it and say to people, hey, as people that work in the hobby full time and as breakers who are presenting themselves as trading card professionals, we've got an obligation to people. We've got an obligation to collectors. And that goes from people who started collecting yesterday or people that started collecting 30 years ago.
Yep.
We've got an obligation to, one, make sure the products we're presenting are presented accurately. And two, we've got an obligation to call out bullshit when we see bullshit.
Yep.
That's something that doesn't happen nearly enough. It's something that just doesn't happen for a million and one reasons. And we could run through all the reasons why certain things don't ever see the light of day or things are swept under the carpet and all the rest of it. But it never really sees the light of day. So I said, you know what? I'm going to try and bring this to the public opinion. I want to get public opinion on it.
Yep.
To see if perhaps I'm being biased. Maybe I am. You know, as a few people said on the Facebook post, maybe I am being biased against people who could be perceived as rival breakers or competition. Maybe I am. And if that's the case, I'm happy to raise my hand and say, yeah, all right, I'm being an idiot. But I wanted to get public opinion on it. And when I did and sort of put it through, a few more people reached out to me and said, oh, yeah, I've seen this and I've seen this. And sure enough, an auction on a 23, 24 Prism Mega Box would make $400-500 in a $1 auction format as a break. That's an extortionate amount above what the retail on that box is. Now, the retail on a box might be $200 or
that's like
whatever
going back to 18, 19 type prices.
Yeah, huge.
Yeah. We're going back to COVID,
Yeah, phenomenal. Like genuine. And that's when I started to see that, that's what initially made me think, well, hang on. That doesn't seem organic to me. That doesn't seem like something that should be happening in the hobby because people are going to get burnt. People are going to get are going to have a bad experience because at the end of the day, you open a mega box as a personal and you might not get any cards. When you divide that up by 30, there's 28, 29 people walking away from that break unhappy.
Yeah.
And if
and to be fair, that's consistent through all breaks, not just breaks who are done in like $1 auctions. Like breaks can be very problematic in terms of 100%. Return on.
And I'm very open with our entire community, and we often do FaceTime Q&As that we do. We try and do one every couple of weeks where anyone can ask us any questions on stream, and we'll open them live. Like we answer them live. And I'm an avid believer and say, well, if you're going into breaks and purely just chasing specific cards, well, you're going into breaks for the wrong reason. If you're going into breaks and you're purely trying to get cards out of them, well, go and find the cheapest eBay breakers that you can find, because that's going to get you the cheapest possible cards out of a break that you can get, because there's no value adds to it. There's no other services that they're going to offer other than opening some cards and sending them to you. That is perfectly fine. There's a whole bunch of people that just want to get the cheapest cards possible out of a break. But there's also people that want to go in.
And there's player break options too. I think now we're having this conversation too. The other part to add to that too, if you just want to collect a particular player, there's some really good breakers out doing case breaks. AMT is the one that comes to my mind.
North of Seven is someone that, North of Seven are one that I chased a lot of when I was looking for rainbows. I tried to do the Harry Kuehl Obsidian Rainbow, and I'm down to the to 5 and the to 1. So I was happily buying the Harry Kuehl spot in Obsidian case breaks for $10-15 because that was all I wanted was the card. I wasn't looking for entertainment. I wasn't looking for anything other than the Harry Kuehl card, and it made perfect sense. And I was happy to buy at auction, and if I got shilled up, so be it, because I was chasing that specific card. But if I'm buying into a random teams break, if I'm buying into a PYT where I'm just chasing investment cards or generic full teams, well, I want to make sure that I'm doing it as best possible
on a even playing field, I guess, is the thing. I mean, you outed yourself as a Liverpool fan. I'm a Lakers fan, so I feel the pain of having to pay a premium for for the I suppose the big teams.
Yeah.
Russell doesn't have that problem being a Sacramento fan.
They're very cheap at the moment. I'll give you that. Yeah.
But that's the thing. Like, I can understand one team being bid up, right?
Mm-hmm.
You get into a bidding. I get into a bidding war with a Lakers fan, and I'm paying overs.
100%.
But what you're referring to in this post is we're talking multiple teams, and we're talking the same person bidding up those teams.
Correct.
That's a pattern. That's not an anomaly.
No, and that person, I think the biggest sort of the biggest thing to come of that was the fact that person didn't win any teams. So they were either the most unluckiest person in the world, and I know a lot of the retorts that people were commenting who were supporting that person were saying, if I shill teams, well, I have to pay for them and I lose the money. Well, shilling isn't just winning a card to create a false comp.
Correct.
There's multiple versions of shilling. Yes, people shill to create false comps when you're talking singles and seal stuff, but you shill to get the card up to a price point where you then dump it on someone else who just outbids you. There's just bidding up, and shilling is a term that sort of gets applied probably incorrectly a bit of the time.
Can we stay with this, actually? Because I think this is probably maybe the most interesting part of this conversation. So what are the other reasons why people shill? This is actually good to talk about.
Yeah, so shilling is something that I feel people are doing. The majority of people that are doing it so that they can basically set themselves a reserve that is basically an absent reserve. It's something that people can't see as a reserve.
Yep.
eBay charge you a fee to set a reserve. Auctions don't perform as well when they've got a reserve on them. So no one actually wants to set a reserve. Yep. But if I say, hey, I'm chucking up this, LeBron ads, can you just chuck a $200 bid on?
Yeah.
Essentially, that's my $200 reserve.
Correct.
The sale goes through, and it's great. If it doesn't, well, at least I know I'm going to get more than $200 because someone's outbid that initial spot. So, I think that's probably the main way that people shill is just by using friends accounts to bid on things. Like it's something everyone does, and a lot of people don't even see it as being wrong through ignorance. Like it's I know I founded with Anthony and George the largest soccer cards buy sell swap group in the country, and it's one of the most active in the world. It's bigger than the majority of NBA groups these days, and the amount of times we would see people on there and they would have things currently at auction on eBay and list a sale, or they would have a bid going on, and they genuinely just didn't process the impact it's having while they were making the decision. So it's about education. And
I think because it's so common. I think if we're being maybe pragmatic, I'm not too sure if that's the right word, but if you do go onto eBay, I feel like every auction I go in is shielded up. So I'm like, I need to make the decision about what I want my maximum bid to be. I put my maximum bid in, and then if I lose it, okay, fine. Like, I lost to someone else, or I lost to a shiller. Sorry, Adam.
I agree completely on the setting this reserve. It's really simple. It's like, I don't want my, $100 card to go for $10. I put it up for $1 auction, but I really don't want it to go for $10.
Yeah.
And go, you know what? I'm going to ask someone to put a $50 bid in so I get what I'm prepared to sell the card for at least. And then somebody sees it up at 50, goes, that's $100 card, and they bid 60. Do you know what I mean? Like it's setting that base floor so it's not really a $1 auction.
Correct.
I think that's the ethical.
And that's what a lot of people ethically just are find it in that grey area where they say, well, I wasn't really doing anything wrong. And that's the one sort of type of shilling that I think will always probably sit in that grey area as far as, that initial bid, that one bid of, I'm going to do my nuts here. I need to get someone to bid on it for me, or along those lines. I think the worst type of shilling is what we saw with, I think it was Trae Young's cards for a long time.
I was actually going to bring this up.
Yeah.
So I think we should also add to this is that I'm not sure this has actually been totally proven, so it's more of a conspiracy type theory at the moment, but let's put our tinfoil hats on for 2 seconds. Roll it out, Rod. This is a good one.
Yeah, so for a large period of time, and even to a degree now, Trae Young cards comp amazingly well. you look up any sort of mid to high end Trae Young card, and it has incredible comps that sort of, a lot of the time are on par with Luka from the same sort of rookie year and whatnot. Yet there doesn't seem to be many verifiable actual sales. And if you speak to people that are saying, who's buying these cards?
Yeah.
Everyone's got, stories of buying a $2,000 PSA 9 Luka Prism and all those sort of stuff from even around the peak of the hobby, and, spent buying $30 Mosaic base Zions and jars and all the rest of it. But there never seems to be this paper trail for Trae. There's never guys saying, hey, can I buy all your Trae Youngs? You get a few of them, but the demand in the market has never seemed to match the actual sales.
Yeah.
And the rumor goes, or the story goes, that there is a network of people out there that are basically just shilling up every Trae Young, and they're buying all the high end and the desirable trays to then create a false market from which they can resell the ones that they've brought at a lower price point.
I mean, it's a pretty wild conspiracy when you think about how many Trae Young cards are out there.
Yeah.
But his silver PSA 10 is currently selling for $200. So I think obviously their network isn't large enough to prop up the entire market. But I do definitely agree with you on like the low numbered NT flawless stuff. It does seem slightly inflated. Yeah,
it does. And I know there's a lot of incidents in regards to the low numbered stuff and the low pop stuff, generally speaking, where there's people who will be trying to sell a card and they will go and pay overs on eBay for a card. Or when I say pay, they will buy the card, cancel the sale, not proceed with the sale to generate that fake comp. To generate that.
That's where the ethical problem is, right? That's where you're using it for gain.
Correct, and it creates an issue for the seller of the original card because they've now got to relist it and go through the whole process of dealing with that. And then you've got, and it's not something that's unique to the card industry either. It's something that as the card industry gets more mainstream and it continues to get more mainstream, these are just old traps that people have had in every industry across the world forever and a day. They're just turning up into the card industry. That,
it's not just the cards on eBay that are getting shilled.
Correct. It's just the card industry's time. And I think that's where a lot of the issue with breakers and getting back to the $1 auction thing, it's just something that, people are comfortable and happy to do in other industries and in other forms of life. And they're just applying these sort of nefarious tactics to the card industry. And because of the lack of education and because of the lack of sort of authority in the hobby.
So, Adam, this is when you cue your catchphrase.
Mate, I know. Regulate. My biggest thing that I've from day one is all about regulating the hobby. And we've talked about it. Like, the first thing that stood out to me was you calling out that it's an unregulated section. These groups, these WhatsApp groups, these Facebook pages. It's relatively unregulated, and that's the thing. Like when I go and bid on a card that's on an auction, right? Mm-hmm. I am pretty lazy or busy with work, depending, and I will go and put my highest bid in, and that's it. Like, it'd be like, I don't know, rookie card that I think is worth $100, and I'll go, you know what? I'm happy to pay 75 for that. 20 minutes into the auction, I'm like 75, and then just walk off. If I win it, I win it. Right?
And I think the big thing is you're doing that from a position of someone that's educated on what they're buying.
Yeah, but I'm also just putting it on one card.
Yeah.
And this is the thing about patterns, right? Like, somebody that's does that across the board is obviously doing that for different reasons. They're not wanting to buy every spot in that break.
No, and it does also come down to who your market is and who your target audience is.
Yep.
And, every successful breaker that I know of in Australia spends a lot of money on marketing and a lot of money on customer acquisition. And, some people spend more money on paid ads, and some people just DM everyone else's pages and sort of do the grind work that way. But when you're doing paid ads, you're getting, generally speaking, depending on how you've got them structured, you're generally getting new people into the hobby. And these pages are gateways to the hobby, and they're getting more people involved and having that obligation. If you're going to make a living out of the hobby, you've got an obligation to do it right. And I've always said that from day dot. The WhatsApp groups frustrate me to no end. So I won't claim to have invented the WhatsApp groups for trading cards, but a close friend of mine did, and I was the first one to bring them to Australia. So I was the first one to create WhatsApp groups in Australia, and we did it for the right reasons. We dropped 1 or 2 messages a day, if that. People could opt in, opt out. It wasn't anything sort of too dramatic. We didn't add anyone that didn't want to be in there.
Yep.
And ran it for the right reasons. Now they've just been bastardized by everyone, and they're being used for things like $1 auctions.
Yeah. I suppose my big question now, and I don't know if Russell's got the same one on his mind, with this in mind, with what we know these pages what can happen, regardless of the intent or lack of intent or lack of knowledge, what would be the key bits of advice to give to those people that are a little bit naive or new to the hobby, that are going, here's $1 auction, I'm going to jump into that. What is that? What are the key bits of advice you'd give to someone that's going to place a bid and want to put their hat in the ring, so to speak?
My piece of advice to anyone is to just ask questions. Ask questions on what you're not sure about. Don't be afraid to reach out to a few of the incredible groups and communities. And, there's you guys, and there's everyone from the Cherry Crew is fantastic at it. The Cherry Crew are a bunch of savages. As soon as anyone posts anything in there, they don't hold back. They just go.
Yep.
It's an unfiltered sort of immediate resolution. I think it's really hard in Australia, and that's a lot of why I made that post, because I believe the Sports Card Scammers page should be about education. It shouldn't just be about posting someone who's been naughty to scamming events.
Yeah.
It needs to be about education, and it needs to be. Yeah. It needs to have those discussions, because then people are going to say, "Hey, I need to be double checking this. I need to double check whether or not the breaker's a legitimate breaker, or whether or not this team is the right value, or the one thing and the one example that happens more in soccer because of the changing checklists is that you wouldn't believe how many times I see breakers selling teams who don't have any cards in a checklist. They'll sell a spot, and that team's not on the checklist, and they're normally in the checklist, but for this product they're not.
Yeah, right.
That happens, and it's not an intentional thing.
Yep.
It's just the breaker being lazy.
Yep.
And the breaker not giving a shit, or not giving a toss, that they can just copy what they did on the last product because, it's surely the same, or it's close enough. And,
that's just attention to detail, isn't it? Yeah.
It is. So I think there's nowhere really in Australia that people can go, obviously, like as a day one collector, as a week one collector, as a week two collector, there's nowhere that people can go and say, hey, I can get the right information. Dan does some incredible work.
You talking about Dan the Card Man?
Yes. Yeah, so he does some great stuff through his channel. But again, and we can all become guilty of it at times.
He went international recently with that PSA card slab story he did.
Yeah, that was really good. That was really good. But I think
the person that we won't name internationally picked it up, so I'm like, that was pretty cool,
Yeah, that's handy. But I think the one thing that we're all a bit guilty of is that we can assume, or just sort of organically fall into the trap of thinking everyone knows, or everyone's at the same knowledge level as your average collector.
Yep.
There's so much to work out at the start, though. It's actually ridiculous. When you say it like that, it's actually very true.
It's stupidly overwhelming. There is so much for people to get their head around. There's so much for people to learn. There's so much for people to know. Getting their head around checklists. We are the only breaker that I know of that produces basically a cheat sheet for every checklist. I'm not sure if you guys have seen what we do with them, but essentially we tell everyone on every single product what cards each team has got in that product. And it's not just hey, Chase Luka and Steph Curry autos. It is the Kings have got these exact autos.
Yeah.
De'Aaron Fox is signing in this set. He's not signing in this set. And then we price every team according to those cheat sheets. We do that on every new NBA release. We release our cheat sheets, and on every soccer product, we do it religiously. And that's about education. It's letting people know what they're looking for in a product. They're not, how many Lakers spots do you reckon have sold over the years for people chasing LeBron autos? Because that's what they want.
Yeah.
The
Lakers are really high too. When you say it like that,
the Lakers are always high. Like back in the day, it used to be Kobe autos, and there was a reason to do it.
There was a reason, but people see the Lakers and go, "What do I want? I want LeBron autos."
True.
Is this going to be LeBron? And I think there has to be. You don't need to hold everyone's hand and treat everyone like kindergarten kids and whatnot, but there needs to be a level of obligation to the customers from people that are going to make a living out of breaking cards. Yeah. It's not you are getting paid. People are giving you their hard-earned money to provide
Yeah.
a service. And when I see someone turn on their iPhone, hit go, spend, I think we actually checked it last year. We found the shortest immaculate NBA break last year. The entire stream went for 4 minutes and 10 seconds or something. Like,
Yeah,
That's actually quite fast. Whoever
you
did
know,
that, well played.
they've just collected $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 off people to provide a service, and the best they can do is go live on their iPhone for 4 minutes and 10 seconds. It's, for me, it just doesn't sit right, and it doesn't bode well for the greater health of the hobby, which I plan to be doing this ideally for the rest of my life. I don't want to go back to a 9-to-5 gig.
Yeah.
So the health of the hobby is what's most important, and running $1 auctions and doing, giving away PlayStations and Switches and all that sort of stuff is just not going to be what's going to make the hobby sustainable long term.
Long term, I agree with that 100%. Hey, I do like to hear about problems and issues, but I would also really like to hear about a solution. So if you were in charge of Adams regulating the hobby department, what would you implement into the hobby?
As far as regulation goes, I would love to have a industry watchdog to some capacity, and it does need to be someone who is relatively independent. And
didn't someone try and make an Australian board or something like that and get people to buy into it?
I've no idea.
It wasn't me, by the way.
Yeah, it was. I don't know. I haven't seen anything come up in regards to that. And I don't think you could necessarily get away with it being an official sort of,
I remember Veriswap.
Veriswap's again just another sort of,
That's a trade platform, and that's
still
going.
That's
still going.
But that's a trade platform for verification.
They've put their foot down recently with their marketing and their sort of aggressive social media sort of imprint. But I think what it needs to be is something that does have people who are going to butt heads, that does have people who are going to argue different sides of a coin, and people that are going to offer an unregulated opinion on what the regulation in the hobby should be. Because you look at even, and I was chatting to one of the Scammers page admins about it, and I said, I've had a look at the admin team, and every single one of you are either from the same clique or are, years away from the hobby. It's not how it works. Like, it shouldn't be that way. When I was still at Soccer Cards Australia, we brought an admin on, and the admin was, as these guys would put it, a rival breaker. That we brought in, because he brought in a mindset that was different to what we had.
Yeah.
And that should be encouraged as opposed to compressed. Now, since that post, I've been removed from probably half a dozen groups that I know of.
I'm not surprised. And that's also, I was trying to tiptoe around this before, but that is also why people don't call people out, because there is always
censorship,
some degree of fallout from it, and how you manage calling out somebody in a PC way, basically. Yeah,
correct. And I'm pretty lucky in regards to having an incredible community that supports us and what we do, and an ability to fight back and have a platform to stand on should people want to, push back and all the rest of it. Unfortunately, most people that are, just collectors in the hobby don't have that platform and don't have that support. So they get crushed, and we've seen it happen before. There was a recent post on Scammers that happened. Someone's tried to call someone out, and there was an overwhelming tide of, mutual friends that came in and just swallowed it all up until the post got locked and buried down the bottom. And no one has the time or involvement to actually follow through with it. And I think a lot of it is because these people who initiated these groups, and, the NBA card market and those sort of pages are all the same, they were all fully involved in the hobby in 1920, 2021, and they were guns blazing, making money hand over fist, and everything was good. Now that the hobby's contracted, and it's contracted, but it's a lot stronger in regards to those who have remained in the hobby are genuine collectors, it is a lot harder to make money out of the hobby than what it was during the boom, because people have a higher expectation of what's required. So these guys are now in charge of these groups, which were founded 3, 4, 5, 10 years ago, but are no longer actively involved in the hobby on a day-to-day basis. So they don't really care. They don't really want to push it. And it's nothing. I'm not having a go at those guys that are doing it, because they've moved on. And the issue is, you can't just start a new group and say, we're going to take over the old ones, because it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah, I think, to be fair to those guys, I think they're just a regular group of guys like Adam and I, who just started to do a podcast or
Yeah.
started their own group. And, look, it did probably become into something that maybe they didn't realize how big it was going to become to. And in the case in point for the Australian Scammers page, I think that's, who knows if they realized how important it was going to be for the Australian community.
Yeah.
Then to take your point about, people moving on, like definitely people move in and out of the hobby, every single day.
Yeah.
Do they have a contingency plan and a plan of like moving people through the committee and having someone in charge for X amount of years so that it does stay fresh? Maybe they don't have that. But again, they probably didn't think about all that type of stuff. Do you know what I mean? So like,
100%. It does.
I see your point, but I also see the situation that the admin would be on that page, because I just doubt they considered it.
I don't know that there's a solution for it. I don't want to be an admin on the Scammers page. I don't have the time.
That's right.
I don't.
So we can't give these guys too much crap, right? Because I don't want to be an admin on the page either. That sounds like my worst nightmare.
Who wants to help regulate? It's like, no,
thanks. Like no one's getting paid. It's an unpaid position. You just hear people whinging the whole time.
I'll give you my advice if you ask for it, and I'll help you along the way. But I don't know that there is necessarily an easy answer to it.
No, there's not. Yeah. I feel like we're getting into quite deep water here, Rod. Do we step into one light question and then we'll tie this up? So you wanted to discuss about the comparison of soccer to NBA in terms of prospecting. So maybe just run us through a little bit of that, because soccer is your bread and butter. This is like your speciality. In NBA, I mean, everyone knows this. Mostly we chase rookies. That's like the big thing.
100%.
You're telling me offline it's a little bit different in soccer.
Yeah, so my entire knowledge of NBA is card related. Like if I learnt it through cards, great. If not, I've got very little NBA knowledge. But soccer is my baby. Soccer is what I love, and
great.
The soccer market.
Give us a couple of minutes on this, man. Yeah,
collectibles. So when it comes to soccer, and the reason that I think I love soccer so much, and from a hobby sense, is that people generally love their teams in soccer a lot more passionately than, say, your NBA or your NFL sort of collectors that can generally gravitate towards players.
Yeah, definitely. That's a massive trend.
Yeah, there's a definite. You've got.
Yeah, people are buying. I buy Liverpool cards because I love Liverpool. I watch them at 2 a.m. in the morning because I love Liverpool, and a lot of people are second and third generation supporters of those teams. Their family did. Whether they're European originally and their family followed them back in Europe, or for whatever reason they follow their team and they follow their team religiously. Yep. So what that creates is, and we've discussed this on our channel a little bit recently as well, is what this creates is a bit of animosity between the collectors, which is great because it's a great it's a healthy banter between collectors. But what it also means is that Manchester United could have the greatest rookie in the last 50 years in soccer, and I'm not going to collect them as a Liverpool fan. I will not go near a Manchester United player. I won't have one in my PC. And if that player then moves to Liverpool, I'll collect him, but only in a Liverpool kit.
Okay.
I won't collect him in a Man United kit. So what you get with soccer is that the rookie card of a player isn't necessarily their most valuable card.
Yeah, right.
It generally is, but their first year in the right kit, so their first year in a big kit, is generally speaking going to be, in a lot of cases, equal to what their rookie card is for value. Because people want to buy their kit, they want to buy their team. A player like Cole Palmer is an interesting one. So he's a player who was a rookie at Manchester City in 21-22. Always seemed to have a bit of talent, but never quite made the Manchester City team. No, they've been the best team in the world for the last half a dozen years, so there's no great shame there. Last year, he moved to Chelsea. So another massive team. He moved to Chelsea, and I think he finished the season on 25 to 30 goals and assists. Like, just blew everyone out of the water. Was one of the best players in the Premier League. One of the favourites for Player of the Year. Dominated at Chelsea.
So it's a breakout season, basically.
Yeah, massive season. Massive breakout season. Chelsea fans don't want his Man City rookie cards. So... I share the set. City fans don't want his Man City rookie cards because he's now a Chelsea player. So his cards are in this funny spot at the moment where they've gone up in value, and they have gone up a little bit in value, but nowhere near as much as they would have if he was playing for a random Dutch team or a random Portuguese team, where they're all pretty sort of harmless. No one really gets offended by those teams. Right. So you have this whole dynamic around who a player plays for, what team he goes to, and how that's treated by people in the hobby.
Is there value to be had there? Because I like pockets of value. So can you say this might change around in the future that you're getting like a good sort of cheap rookie card?
I think so, because you get an opportunity with the amount of Topps products in particular, who Topps do UEFA club competitions. So you've got 3 tiers of European competition now. So there's teams from, the Czech Republic, there's teams from Ukraine, there's teams from Greece, and all over Europe. You've got these teams who have an incredible amount of rookies. There's a lot of Dutch teams in there. People love the Dutch rookies a hell of a lot. So you've got players who are 2, 3, 4 years away from perhaps making a big move to one of the big leagues.
Yeah, cool.
They're playing for clubs that you would have never heard of. There's the Bundesliga, which is one of the great, prospecting leagues on the planet. They just released an entire Bundesliga Chrome set.
Yeah.
There's teams like Borussia Mönchengladbach, who no one's ever heard of, but they've got this incredible crop of good young footballers who at some point are going to perhaps get a big move somewhere.
So it's like a prospector's dream, that said, basically.
It is. And there are a lot more soccer collectors, and soccer fans are a lot more forgiving as well. You don't have the dramatic ebbs and flows based on week-to-week performance.
Yep.
So generally speaking, because it's not, soccer's obviously a low-scoring sport where you get a lot of nil-alls and 2-0s
right.
And
that actually makes sense, yeah.
So players can play very, very well without scoring. The weight of the hobby is still very much towards the goal scorers. Goal scorers are the gold. But it means that players are judged more so on blocks of time as opposed to individual performances. You don't get the, player scored a hat-trick on Sunday, there's $1 million of his cards for sale on the Monday. You don't get that sort of return from soccer. It's all about the long-term prospecting and seeing what's about and seeing what sort of moves the players make between leagues as well.
Yeah, right.
There's a few big clubs in the world that are black spots for the hobby. So Bayern Munich, who are the biggest, most dominant team in Germany, and PSG, who's obviously Messi and everyone knows PSG.
Yeah.
PSG's are just this black hole of the hobby. People just don't care about the league as a league. PSG dominated almost every single year. Messi and Neymar went there. Everyone loves Messi and Neymar and Mbappe. But any other players go there, they get these big rookies who are, they've got a guy at the moment, Warren Zaire-Emery, who's 16, 17 years old, making his debut, playing alongside, I think on debut he assisted Mbappe to score as a 16-year-old.
That's crazy. What an experience.
His cards were still at a fair, people chased him, but they weren't at a phenomenal value that you would expect from Lamine Yamal, for example, who's a 16-year-old who's currently playing for Spain in the Euros. His cards are through the roof. Everyone's chasing him. He's the hottest prospect in the hobby at the moment.
Sounds like a hot tip, to be honest, to buy this kid. It sounds like value to me.
But is he ever going to get out of PSG? That's the thing, because if he never leaves PSG, he's only ever going to have a certain ceiling.
Sure.
If he moves to a Liverpool, a Manchester United, a Barcelona, or a Real Madrid, well, he's going to have a much higher ceiling because those clubs are inherently more collectible. And that's where the soccer hobby has just such a bigger dynamic around it, and you can actively chase your own team and then 3 or 4 prospects from completely different leagues and follow their journey as a player. And they can flop at one club and then still be good 2 or 3 years later, turn into incredible footballers.
I get the feeling from soccer. Obviously, it's the comparison from 30 teams in the NBA to all the different leagues in Europe, around the world, and all the products available. I guess it's a very different dynamic.
Yeah,
the NBA is 30 teams, and Panini have just just different card designs.
Rehashed them. Yeah.
Right. Topps did the NBL, but let's not go silly.
Yeah.
But it's like they're talking about college cards. The NBL, international cards. It doesn't matter. No. Everyone just wants the NBA.
Yeah,
it seems like very different card communities.
It's completely different, and people genuinely collect. And vets are treated so much nicer in soccer compared to NBA. So the biggest chasers in.
Is that scarcity?
Not really. Not really. The biggest auto chase in most products this year is a David Beckham auto.
Interesting.
David Beckham is on par with Erling Haaland. Now, look, I might be a bit biased here because David Beckham was a Man United player, but Beckham was very good and is a very important from a culture point of view.
Culture, definitely.
Cult figure. Yeah, cult figure, yeah.
But he wasn't an outright superstar. He's not in the conversation for one of the best of all time and that sort of stuff. Like, he's not a...
And he's on Netflix at the moment too, isn't he?
I don't know. They did one not too long ago. They did the story about his family.
Like surely that would prop up.
Yeah.
That helped a little bit. Helped a little bit. Man United fans love him. He never really did much for England, but no one ever does for the England national team. They just perennially choke. But the players like the legends for each individual team. So
do they sign as much? Because I know Magic Johnson's like one of the most prominent signers going around. So,
depending on who they are, they do.
Okay.
Depending on who they are, they do. And even from an individual club point of view, so you look at someone like, my Liverpool set, we've got Steven Gerrard, who's, one of our greatest players of all time, and he signs a bit, but not in every set.
Okay.
His impeccable autos are still, $600, $700, $800 for a sticker auto, and the short print ones are $1,500, $2,000. He had an on card get released last year, and that was a $2,500, $3,000 auto.
Yeah. And
even the second tier down. So I was looking the other day. Most of the Man United Prism autos still sell for $150 to $200, and they're players who played 3 or 4 years there, scored a bunch of goals, and went on. Guys like Ruud van Nistelrooy, Robin van Persie, and Roy Keane, and these sort of guys who are good Manchester United players, but they're not necessarily the best of the best.
Yep.
Yeah.
They're just, your solid players. They weren't, absolute world beaters. Still sell for $200, $300, $400, whereas in the NBA equivalent, they're essentially sub $50 autos.
Yeah.
On that front.
Well, I think, Rod, we should tie this off, man. I think we've gone for about 30 minutes longer than we planned, which was
that's all right.
delicious. And just thank you for your time. And we really appreciate you coming on and for, starting a conversation and engaging with us on it. We definitely appreciated that.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts?
Awesome. Good to
It'd just be my final thought on this is I think as the hobby overall, it'd be nice if people, and while I appreciate the post that you've made, I think posts that maybe call out to the new people in the hobby to watch out, as in
just education
design, rather than trying to highlight those. And I'm not criticizing your post, but I'm saying how we help.
Yeah.
Is shout out to the new people in the hobby. Look, if you need some help, this is a great community, but fact check everything before you jump in. Maybe a checklist of.
That's the question. I think if everyone
be informed before you make a decision.
Yeah, if everyone has a bit of responsibility and says, you know what, just because I'm a collector and only a collector doesn't mean I can't call out bullshit when I see it.
True.
It'll help a lot.
Yeah. Well,
good discussion.
Thanks, Rod. And
awesome.
Probably by the time this goes to our Hobby Hangout is done and dusted, but we will see you at the Hobby Hangout. And
awesome. I'll see you there.
Yeah.
Be a good weekend.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to this episode. We really hope you enjoyed our lengthy conversation with Rod. And Rod, thank you so much for giving your time to the podcast. We really appreciate your insights and everything that you spoke to us about. And for everyone out there, happy card collecting this week. Have a fantastic week. Bye-bye.